Other than that, he's got a pretty straight identification of what it is that all the arts and sciences of mankind must aim at. They must aim, first of all, chiefly at their own good, but then their own good is to be a utility for man to achieve some other aim, at which, therefore, everything aims. Happiness is such a thing. Happiness no one chooses for the sake of these, nor in general for anything other than itself. You save up money. You try to save up your time by getting things done quickly that you need to get done. You can try to save a lot of things and use them for this and use them for that, but you never save happiness up, do you? You can never save it up. And what would you trade it in for? Right? Happiness, then, is something final and self-sufficient, and is the end of action. Now, we're just a few pages into it, and I think that that's a good first installment for the treatment of the Nicomachean ethics. Happiness is the end of action. Now, he goes on to ask what exactly happiness can be brought about through, and it turns out to be reason, because that is the primary function of man. It is the thing that is peculiar to humans, is reason. So the life of happiness can be brought forth through the practice of reason, but that'll be the next installment. Well, presumably, however, to say that happiness is the chief good seems a platitude. It's not a very important thing to say, right? Because a clearer account of what it is still desired. We can't just say it's the chief good. We've got to go on and say more about it. What causes it? And let's say some more about it, shall we? This might perhaps be given if we could first ascertain the function of man. What is the function of man? For just as for a flute player, a sculptor, or any artist, and in general for all things that have a function or activity, the good and the well is thought to reside in the function, so would it seem to be for man if he has a function. Now we skip just a bit. What then can this be? Life seems to be common even to plants, so the function can't be life, but we are seeking what is peculiar to man. What's the thing that man alone has? Let us exclude, therefore, the life of nutrition and growth. That's not what's good for humans, to make their body bigger and grow and be nutritious. We might bring in health, though. We might reserve that for ourselves, to bring in health later as one of the ingredients of happiness. But it can't be the purpose. It can't be the central core aim. Next, there would be a life of perception, but it also seems to be common even to the horse, the ox, and every animal. There remains then an active life of the element that has a rational principle. Well, there we are. But we must add incomplete life, and I just skipped 2 paragraphs of verbiage. Some of it's a bit interesting, but get the book. We must add in a complete life. Right? So we're not talking about a man who's happy this week or next week or for a month or for a year. We're talking about a man who has happiness as his way of life, in a complete life, he says. Because one swallow does not make a summer, nor does one day make a summer. And so too, one day or a short time does not make a man blessed and happy. Now, Ayn Rand split some hairs here, and she said happiness is the long-term feeling of man, that undercurrent of man. Even during a tragedy, a happy man will be happy because he'll know in the deepest sense of his integrity that he is just fine. No matter what comes of it, tragedy though it may be, he's just fine. But joy is short term. She distinguished between happiness and joy. Joy is the joy of getting drunk. Happiness is the happiness of getting drunk while doing YouTube videos. See the difference? A happy man is integrated throughout his life on a certain theme. The man who just seeks joy day to day is not going to achieve happiness. So we're going to skip now a little bit more. We must act that our main task may not be subordinated to minor questions. Start with that. Let's understand that statement first. Our actions must be in such a way that our main task isn't a minor question. Our main tasks have to be aimed at the big question. An example, you're having a conversation, you say, how do I make $1 million a year? How could I be rich, you know? And the guy next to you speaks up and he says, well, $1 million a year doesn't go as far as it used to. And so he goes off on that for a second. You just have to stop him cold and say, fine, call it 2 million, call it 5, call it 10. My point is, right, back to the point. Now, your actions in life, you're always aiming, your actions every day are aimed at this, they're aimed at that, they're aimed at the other thing. But we must act so that our main task is not subordinated to minor questions. Our main task has to aim at the big question. Now, you say, I brushed my teeth this morning, so I wouldn't have bad breath during the day, or so my teeth would last longer and stuff. And you might die in a car wreck next year, so how do you know that's going to do you any good? But brushing your teeth isn't the end of all action. You can have a lot of these little actions on the side. You just have to make sure that mainly your main task is aimed at your central question, which we've already said is happiness. You can't have it aimed at duty or getting along with people or accepting the common notions of things. You can't have those. Your main task has to be happiness, and you can subordinate other things to it through a chain. They aren't necessarily directly connected. Okay, let's continue. Nor must we demand the cause in all matters alike. It is enough in some cases that the fact be well established. This reminds me of a point that he made in the posterior analytics, analytica posteriori, that sometimes we don't need to know what causes a thing. Sometimes all we need to know is that the thing happens. And I'm sorry to say, it reminds me a little bit more of that epistemological tract and a little bit less of this ethical tract. I'm not sure exactly how to, so you take it as you want. I'll just put it in there because I thought it was a valuable sentence. I'll just go through it one more time. Nor must we demand the cause in all matters alike. We don't have to always know the cause for a thing. It is enough in some cases that the fact be well established. For example, some people want to know the cause of existence. This is the biggest case, biggest example possible. It's enough to say that existence exists. You couldn't possibly know the cause because what caused it was something that existed before, and you're on an infinite regress, so you're done. You can't. So that's the cases he's saying. In some cases, we can just say it happened. It was true. What caused it? Okay, you're going too far. You're backing up past where you can get now. It was true. As in the case of the first principle, he says. The fact is the primary thing of first principle. Take that as you may, write it down, look at it tomorrow. Now, of first principles, we see some by induction and some by perception. Some by a certain habituation, and others too in other ways. I might have even cut that last bit off. Now, of first principles, we see some by induction and some by perception. Here's a principle we see by perception. We see the principle of, what the hell do we see by perception? Heaviness or gravity. We don't see Newton's gravity. All we see is the Greek notion of gravity, pulling things down. You can see that through perception. But to know what gravity is, to know that the moon, even though it never falls, is being held there by gravity, to know that requires induction, right? Some things you can see with your eyes. You can see things fall. But some things you can only know with your mind. You can't know with your eyeballs that the moon is being held there by the same thing that an apple is. You have to find that out with your mind. Fine. Isn't Aristotle great? He's full of stuff, isn't he? It's great. And he just threw this in the middle of an essay on ethics. Now, I'm afraid that we have to skip a couple paragraphs there because it just goes off and you don't need it unless you do need it, in which case you should get the book and read it. It is correct also in that we identify the end with certain actions and activities, for thus it falls among goods of the soul and not among external goods. And otherwise you could say the happy man is the man with the biggest mansion. But we can't do that.